Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another installment of Show Review with Mike G, the show of life, the show of Santa Fe, Texas, Bacardi Legacy, composition, the military, and so much more. Today with the Houston native, the Houston legend himself, Mr. Chris Morris, a recent national finalist for the Bacardi Legacy tournament, tour de force, whatever you would like to call it. We sat down here recently to talk about his career that spanned lots of different industries. He has been in the military, he's been working in warehouses, he was a composer, he was in the metal band. There's so many different things, so many different components to Chris, and he has the time and finds the creative space in his mind to make some amazingly delicious bitters. So, without further ado, I hope you guys enjoy this great chat with Chris Morris.
So far out of music by the time I actually started bartending. I tend to think of it much more as a glass of wine. And
Tell me what's the approach there then?
Because it's all about all these different elements and these flavors elements and balance.
Right.
Which you get from chords, but even with triads, because then you would extend it and you have your seventh and your sixth, and at that point I'd be then I'd be thinking of drinks emotionally.
Ah.
And just
wait, there's nothing wrong with that though, is there?
Yeah, there's not. It's just not how I actually approach drinks.
Yeah.
I don't think there are happy drinks and sad drinks and
really
Locrian. Well, there have been plenty of Locrian drinks, which is just terrible and
dude, there are
and never reach resolution.
Yeah.
I guess would be a
yeah. There's
Locrian
Ionian drinks and basic bitches of drinks.
Yeah.
Really, there are.
Yeah,
but it's an interesting thing when we
that'll be a seminar one day, the 7 modes of craft cocktails.
If you could, think about that. That's kind of now it's a hell of a lot of modes. But if you could do 7 ways, 7 chapters of drinks, it's kind of an interesting thing. So we were talking about this. The name Chris Morris, when you Google, it's quite vague. And we could talk about your distilling career at Brown-Forman. However, that would lead us astray. But this whole thing, this is the nice thing, is that you are a Houston guy. You're a Houston native. Now, this is what they say about you. Even though you grew up, you say, south of Houston in Santa Fe, which I've never been to Santa Fe, Texas.
It's a little small town of about... I was there about 9,000 people.
No kidding.
I think my high school class was about 300.
What do you... I ask this question of everybody, but on a weekend, how do you get into trouble in Santa Fe, Texas?
Usually on a tractor.
It's Footloose? It's Footloose? Is it really Please tell me.
You laugh, man. We legit, every year we host what's called a Ride Your Tractor to Work or Ride Your Tractor to School Day.
Really?
Which is all your football players are they literally don't drive their car. They roll in on their John Deere tractors and park them in the parking lot.
Is there nothing more prototypically Texas than that?
Yeah, no, exactly. And we even joke about our our school fight song.
Okay, what's that?
I don't know the real lyrics to it, but I know what we always sang. So the preface is there's a park in Santa Fe called Runge Park.
Okay.
Our school fight song, we used to always joke the lyrics were we're from Santa Fe, we're not very smart. We drove our John Deeres right through Runge Park.
I like it. I can sing along. You guys are so self-effacing. It's amazing for a small town to admit that you like your tractors.
Oh, yeah.
You're not very smart.
Oh, yeah.
But that doesn't seem true because you seemingly, Air Force takes creme de la creme, right? So you probably were a pretty good student.
Oh yeah, I was ninth in my class with taking with doing the absolute minimum.
Yeah.
I literally designed my entire high school path to not take the hard classes. So I did I got through algebra 2, which I needed to do, and I'm all my friends are doing pre-AP pre-calculus.
Pre-cal, yeah.
I'm gonna go take AP European history.
It's more exciting anyway.
Yeah, we played a lot of chess.
Really?
Yeah, quite literally.
That's pretty brilliant.
Yeah, we'd get done our reading for the day, and we'd have 20 minutes left. We'd all bust out chessboards.
So what other kinds? All right. I don't want to paint these things. I'm trying to make too many assumptions. You're a smart guy. You're playing chess. You're in small town Texas. Were you reading horror sci-fi?
No.
Okay. Were you watching Star Wars and Star Trek? Which I was. It's very self-evident here behind me.
I didn't really get into sci-fi. I was more into fantasy. Like
Okay.
Hobbit, Lord of the Rings kind of guy.
Okay.
Power metal.
Power metal. I like it.
Like one of the first CDs I ever owned, Rhapsody's Legendary Tales.
What is that? What's that all about?
Oh man,
I haven't heard it.
So Rhapsody is this band out of Italy, and like it's everything that was like great about like 80s speed metal.
Okay.
But with,
Yangui
like,
style.
But with, like, what's that?
Yangui, remember Yangui
Yeah.
Mouse? Yeah.
Yeah, like very much in that style, but with like vocals about like dragons and like keyboard solos and like
amazing.
going on a quest to recover the sword.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like they have their albums are literally called like, let's see, they have one that's like Emerald Sword, they have Power of the Dragon Flame. Like
It's
just
very
like,
Final Fantasy.
it's just over the top production.
Yeah.
Or like one of my favorite albums of that period was a band called Blind Guardian. They're out of Germany. Really well respected frontman named Kai Boone. It was called Nightfall in Middle Earth.
Okay.
And it was literally like an hour-long power metal interpretation of the Silmarillion.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, so how does that? I like that I've never met someone that was into fantasy speed metal. Speed metal's fair. Is that a fair way to go? Okay.
Oh man, I used to, when I was real young, I was like 20, 21, I actually like wrote metal reviews, and I categorize everything. Oh yeah, I had an address. My online handle at the time was Spinal.
Spinal?
Reverend Spinal.
Are you still a metalhead?
Not so much these days.
Did you ever have long hair like metalheads?
Yeah,
You did.
I mean, I actually had like the absolute worst haircut. Okay, so
I gotta hear. Because I've got no. He may have a picture, but
I do have a picture. It was basically like the reverse mullet. Like it was party,
Okay.
It was party in the front and business in the back.
kind of like the Misfits thing, almost.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Like it was a straight devil lock, but with like, I have it somewhere. Yeah.
I mean, this is deep in.
Boom.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
So no one should. Now I think everybody should see this. But the fact that I've had the privilege of seeing this, if this is not public, this is a fucking incredible picture.
Yeah.
You're like a refined dude with a vest now.
Yeah.
And now you're looking at this picture. You could have fronted the Misfits.
Yeah.
Or maybe even Cro-Max. Some of these artists. Older
Oh yeah, no.
bunch,
Like
right?
I was a big punk head in high school. Like corduroy jacket with the like sleeves cut off, and like I took Sharpies and like drew my anarchy signs and
Gigi
and like I much more wanted to be Jello Biafra.
I was gonna say bananas in the ass are not an easy thing to accommodate in front of a crowd. I don't know how he did it.
Yeah,
but he did it pretty all the time. But Jello never really had a big drug problem like Gigi.
No.
Right. So it's a little cleaner, I guess.
Yeah, and the thing I appreciate, like Gigi was all like Shock Factor, where like
Sure.
Dead Kennedys were one of the first punk bands I ever got into, just because like it was so politically charged and so intelligent, like the way they wrote.
Yeah.
And like he had just that weird distinctive voice.
Oh man, it's almost shrill at
Yeah.
times. So West Coast punk guy or East Coast punk guy? That's a big question, I think.
It is. I like it all, man.
Okay. That's
Like,
fair.
Like I like everything from like that like East Coast hardcore, like that whole agnostic front, sick
Yeah.
of it all the way to like the the guys on the West, like Anti-Flag,
Yeah,
Rancid, all those guys. Like I love it all.
It's a good mix. Well, so then we've painted this very brilliant, insightful picture of you as a rebel, as a guy who can really process a lot of information at once. Hence, speed metal. It's not easy to understand, especially if you're a musician and you're compositional.
Yeah.
But so this whole thing, the expectation of going to school, because you had it all, right? You're a smart guy anyway.
Yeah.
What was the family's expectation about you? You got to go down that path. You got to go to college.
Yeah. It was you got to get out of our house and go and get a scholarship and go to college.
Any brothers or sisters?
I have a younger sister.
Younger sister. Okay. But they're like, Chris, sorry, man, but you're about of age. Go on your own.
No, like I mean, I was always planning on going to college. That's why I put so much time into like planning out my high school years, like make sure I graduated with honors, so
Right.
like I had good applications.
So a planner, like kind of making sure things turn out.
And
well.
now, I mean, they didn't turn out exactly how I planned because I'd never anticipated actually going to school for music.
Yeah.
That was something that like really just developed really in my senior year of high school because we got our first music theory class.
Uh-huh.
We had a new band director that year, and we'd been like, hey, like we'd really interested in like really learning about like music theory.
Sure.
He's like, if you get me 15 people, I will get you your class.
Oh, no kidding.
So like I took up the reins and the cause and got him his 15 people on the dot. And he got me my class. Like the first semester of my high school years were like complete cakewalk.
Okay.
We did a block schedule, so we only had 4 classes a day.
Right.
So I had an open first block, so I'd always show up with kolaches. I had music theory second, then lunch, band, and then 2 days a week I took a dual credit government class at our local junior college.
And that's it.
So 3 days a week I showed up for music theory and band and went home.
That's amazing. Well, what was compelling about music theory for you?
Just really kind of digging deeper into like this thing that I'd been doing for like 7 years.
Yeah.
And our final exam on there was basically you had to create like this, it was like 32 bar piece. And like, you know, and you did it in baby steps over the course of the semester. Like you fleshed out your melody and then you figured out your chord structures underneath and then you arranged it. Mine was done in 6 weeks.
You just had it.
Yeah, because like I had shown an interest in it, and I think we pirated a copy of Finale at the time, so I was like getting in there and playing around with it. And, like, that's what I did when I went home. I was like, all right, I'm going to work on this thing. I had like a really awesome melody that I loved, and like just knocked it out. And so I spent like the rest of the year just like learning advanced music theory on the side, and then just like fleshing that out and just turning in the assignments on this piece that were already done. And then we got done with that class, and my band director comes up to me and he's like, hey man, he's like, if you're interested, I'd love to have you take your piece, extend it out into a full composition, get a committee of your peers and perform it at our spring concert.
Wow.
And I was like, all right, like challenge accepted.
That's amazing.
Like let's go, let's have some fun. And so like literally just rounded up anybody, arranged it for who would come, and like got up there and like conducted my first piece.
Was it strings or horns or both?
It was both.
Oh wow!
It was strings, horns, and full percussion.
Jeez, that's brilliant.
Yeah, the marimba player's like wrists no doubt hurt because it had this like really syncopated rhythm underneath, like bum 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 bum, and they're just like bum bum with like 4 sticks.
Does this kind of like intense understanding and passion for music does it come from your family at all? Where you were the first guy? Like,
no,
mom played it.
My family life makes 0 sense to what I do now.
That's crazy.
Like. My mom was huge on like Mariah Carey and like Whitney Houston and like listening to like quad CD DJs and things like that. We weirdly had like 3 Ice-T albums for no reason. A lot of MC Hammer and Vanilla Ice growing up.
These are great things though.
Yeah, I mean they're all great things like when you look back at it. But like my foray into like metal and then later jazz and now like bluegrass and old country, like it makes absolutely no sense. Like there was no drinking in my house when I was growing up.
Really?
Like so many people
against it or just not a thing?
That just not a thing.
Yeah.
My dad was very pro for it when he was in the Army.
I would imagine
as I understand. I actually recently got to gift him a bottle of what he drank when he was in the Army.
No kidding. Do you care to share what he drank in the Army?
Osbach.
Really? I'm not familiar with that actually.
It's a German brandy.
Ooh.
Yeah, because like when I learned it was in Germany, I was like, too much Jaeger, yeah. And he's like, it was actually Osbach. And I was hanging out with him one day. He works in car dealerships. So I was hanging out. My car was getting serviced, and I was like talking about it. He's like, I've asked like the people at like Specs, like I'd like to get a bottle for like old time's sake. He's like, they don't know what I'm talking about. I'm like, yeah, it's because you're asking people at Specs. Like, like they've got like 3 bottles they're supposed to sell. I was like, I'll be right back. I like took his loaner car, went to the Specs 2 doors down. I got my car back, went to the Specs 2 doors down, walked in, brandy aisle, Osbach, $23, drove back, like put it on my dad's desk. Man. He's like, oh my God, are you serious?
Did you guys share a sip together?
No.
Is that ever going to happen? So for me, that's
I don't know, man. Like that bottle might still be unopened.
Really?
Yeah, he drinks a lot of Moscato with his new wife now.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Not so bad. Did you get him some Pisco then? So this tastes like it if you were to put this in a still right now. Getting some nerdy,
I know, right? But like he had a big drinking problem when he was in the Army. He woke up in a tree in a church parking lot. I was like, tell me it wasn't Sunday. He goes, no, it wasn't. But like
no one there to point.
But like that's when he like finally had to draw the line.
Yeah.
And like the only drinking in my house growing up was New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
My mom would have her 1 shot of Cuervo Gold.
Nice.
And my dad would have a 7 and 7.
Amazing.
And that was it.
Really?
And like there might be like a stray Bud Light in the fridge from when like one of the aunts or uncles came over. But like
that's it.
And nobody was ever against it. There was no like, we weren't taught that like alcohol is this demon. It's just nobody in the family really drank.
Right.
And it was
kind of
just,
like the way that you come across metal. No one's
Yeah.
listening to power metal.
Yeah, it's like I had this like cool wine career. I didn't taste wine until I was 21.
Wow. That's kind of incredible though.
Yeah.
So this going back to the compositional piece, you seem to have a knack for it. You understand instrumentation. That's great. So you go to school for it. There's a college in Santa Fe, is that correct?
No, I went to college in East Texas.
Texas.
Tyler.
Oh, Tyler.
Okay. Yeah, so Tyler Junior College, because they were the only ones that gave me a full ride scholarship.
Yeah.
And money talked more than location.
Well, of course it does in this industry now, too. You're going to follow the money, whether it's brand or behind a bar, right? But this passion for music, was it stifled at some point? Because at some point, the Air Force introduces itself as well. Your dad's an Army guy. You have this opportunity with the Air Force.
Yeah. So, I mean, what happened, we'd been playing, on that underground show grind and, playing Dallas and Austin and everywhere in Houston that would like accept us.
Yeah.
And eventually we got a call, this PR agency, like, the so-and-so, and we're like, yeah, they're like, we represent this band, client of ours called Testament. We're like, we're quite familiar.
Man. Yeah.
And they're like, we've heard your material. We're putting together a 3-week tour of the East Coast. We want to know if you guys would be interested
to tour with Testament.
Oh
shit,
and we're
that's
like,
awesome.
Yeah, like we'll quit our jobs. We'll sell everything right now. And they're like, all right, we'll call you back with the details in a couple hours. And they called us back, and the details were we were to provide a $10,000 check up front for tour expenses.
What?
And provide our own transportation.
Why don't you just pay for it yourself? Don't let them do it for you, right?
Yeah, and we never practiced again.
Oh, shit.
Like, there was just this understanding in the room of like, all right, we did it. We made it. We got the offer we were looking for. And one of the things I like to say in life is like, you won't ever find your true passion until you have to sacrifice for it.
Yeah.
And so like when we came to that wall and we had to make that sacrifice, and in this case, a monetary sacrifice, we just weren't willing to do it. And there was this mutual understanding of like, if this is what the future holds, it's not worth pursuing. Like,
wow.
Well, let's go our separate ways. Like, some of us will go form other bands. Some of us will probably like burn out like I did and like, get out of it. And like, I wound up, playing in bands again a couple of years later, but it took a couple of years to kind of recover and be like, okay, like that was it. Like, this is that side of the industry. But we knew there were festivals because we looked at playing things like Milwaukee Death Fest and like,
right.
They're pay to play festivals, right? Like, they give you tickets and you have to sell tickets for them. And like, that determines like your billing slot. And we're like, we never were about that life.
Yeah.
We never did any of it. And so like, we just had this amicable break. We're just like done.
So then what is introduced in your life in that point? Something's going to probably fill this gap, not intentionally, but just by the nature of things.
Yeah. Really at that point, like I was just working, playing a lot of Magic the Gathering.
You know Jarrett Pena?
I don't.
So you guys should get together. He's a massive fan of Magic the Gathering. I don't get it because I was too busy. I don't know what the fuck I was doing. Probably watching David Lynch movies, something like that. But yeah, so this is a good thing. Perhaps there needs to be a club, a gathering.
We haven't played in years.
Yeah,
like it's way too expensive.
Is it really?
Oh God. Like we were playing like a really great Golden Age. Like I was relatively successful doing it because no matter what I do, like I'm going to strive for excellence and I'm going to like find a way to compete.
Okay.
And just like grind it out. So like we were literally traveling around like every weekend going to like Pro Tour qualifiers and like Grand Prix trials.
Yeah.
So we're in Austin one week, Houston one, then we're in Dallas, we're in OKC, we're driving out to New Orleans, and this is like every week or two we're just driving around doing these.
I didn't even understand that there's a tour circuit for this.
Oh yeah.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Your wife's nodding her head too. So one thing I got to point out is off the mic. Samantha, your wife is here.
Yeah.
Both supporting and shaking her head at certain things that you say. There's thumbs up moment here, and then there's like, oh fuck, really, Chris? You really want to talk about that? But that's a good thing, and we'll talk about marriage here shortly because being in the industry obviously puts a lot of stress on things in that respect. But okay, so the Air Force piece, I'm still curious how this comes in for you. We talk about.
So it comes in. I was just kind of floating around. Like I was still trying to break into like my dad's industry. Like cars. I was working in like parts warehouses.
Yeah.
That's partially why I had that really awful haircut.
Okay.
Is like I worked in warehouses in Houston, Texas. They're 110 degrees.
Yeah,
It sucks no matter how much AC you have. So like I wasn't willing to fully commit to like long hair.
Right.
But unless you're Frank Mullen from Suffocation, bald dudes look really stupid headbanging. So I wanted long hair to have something to headbang. So hence like the shaved head Tefl lock combo.
To get some nice updrift in the back to cool things down, but still give you something to flail.
Yeah, and I wound up losing a job, and I needed money, and a friend of mine, her brother was working construction, and he's like, "Oh, I can get you a construction job. It'll start at $15 an hour." I'm like, "Fuck yeah, that's awesome. That's a lot of money."
Yeah.
And I'll never forget. I show up for that first time, and we're all in like our meeting. I got my new hard hat and my tools. It looks really funny when you say it now, but
eventually, once your career is done, you will have been all of the village people.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't think with my background I get to be a cop.
Well, just wait.
I know most of them. I know the Indian.
See, there you go. It's easy.
I don't know if you know Peter Yonke from Tongue Cut Sparrow.
Oh, no, I know the name. I haven't met him.
Yeah, he was our high school mascot.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, he had like long flowing locks and a motorcycle, and every Friday night he was dressed as an Indian with no shirt on. Yeah.
Like
nothing but a vest.
Like John Redcorn from King of the Hill. That's what comes to mind, actually. Yeah. But it's incredible. Lighter shade of Native American, rather.
Yeah.
Well, so the construction piece, this is a formative thing for you?
Yeah, because it sucked.
Okay.
But no, so going back to what I was saying, like I remember showing up for the first day, and we're having our meeting and like a signing cruise, like you with you, you're like we were putting up streetlights.
Yeah.
And the guy looks around, he's like, "Yeah, just to let you know, boys, we got a lot of projects coming up. We got some work. We got some work in Corpus. We got some work, out in Austin. Like make sure you update your POs and." Get all your paperwork in line. And I'm like, it's funny. He made a parole joke, and everybody else is taking notes, and I'm not laughing. And I'm like, oh, that's a legitimate thing. All these guys have records. And so like I worked that, and I was working a job down in Corpus Christi, and I was just looking around. I'm like, this is not how I envisioned this turning out. And I was like, sitting in class was like a way more cool thing. And I'm like, I'm going to go talk to these military guys and see what they can do. Like, let's go travel. Let's go have some fun. So I originally interviewed with the Navy and took all my testing with them, which did not work. There are not a lot of jobs for a colorblind sailor. Weirdly.
You're colorblind?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, like the color purple does not exist. Like, does not exist to me.
It's a great movie, Chris. You should. Sorry. It's a wonderful movie. Spielberg. Whoopi Goldberg, I think she won an Academy Award for it. Anyway, so that's beyond the point here.
Yeah.
But so you can't see. So the Air Force will be okay with that?
Yeah, I just had much more opportunities. So like when I went and talked with like the Navy recruiters, they took me in, they gave me my ASVAB, like I aced it like a 97, and they're like, you can go right. We're gonna set you up to take our nuclear entrance exam. Wow. And I'm like, this sounds intense.
Yeah, it does.
And I suck at math, so I'm gonna call my friend and figure it out. But they're like, yeah, like just do this, do your 4 years. Like you can choose to go out in the subs, you get hazard pay, do your 4 years, you're gonna get out, you're gonna get 4 figures right out with a 5-figure signing bonus.
Nice.
Like, people want these guys in the industry. And I was like, yeah, and even if you mess up the nuclear entrance exam, you can go into AECF, Advanced Electronics and Communications. Okay. So go into that, do your 4 years, 6 figures right out, basically guaranteed if you don't continue your military career. I'm like, yeah, this sounds awesome. And so I go home and I'm researching these things, and they all have this little small print that says requires normal color vision.
Oh no. So
I go back into my recruiter office. I was like, hey man, I was researching all the nuclear job codes, and I noticed it has these things, and I'm a little colorblind. And they're like, no, it's really easy. They just give you this test. It's like a field of dots, and there's a number, and you just tell them what number it is. I'm like, yeah, I've done that. I'm terrible at it. Jeez. I'm absolutely awful. And they're like, oh, try this one right here. What number do you see? I'm like, I see a giraffe. Like, okay, what letter do you see? I'm like, 7. They go, how would you feel about being a culinary specialist?
Oh my God, that sounds good too, though.
I was like, are you kidding me? we 3 days ago we were having a conversation about like go and like launch missiles off of a nuclear sub and then get six figures
Making a submarine sandwich.
Yeah, and now you're like, and now you're telling me like, yeah, go make sub sandwiches. And like, well, I saw our best of the field, like why we're getting like private chefs to admirals. I'm like, I don't care. Like this conversation is over.
Wow.
Like we are done. It's like I went home, like emailed the Air Force recruiter in the next office over, and I was like, hi, my name is Chris Morris. I was talking to the Navy. This is my score on this exam. What do you have for me? And like takes 30 seconds. I get a call. He was like, hey, this is Sergeant so-and-so. Why don't you, have you signed anything? I'm like,
Oh, Jesus.
I was like,
It's a great question, isn't it?
no. He's like, make sure I haven't signed a military contract. I'm like, no, I haven't signed anything. He's like, why don't you come down to my office and let's have a conversation. So I went down. We talked about some options. I wound up signing up to be a cryptologic linguist, which then I had to take like the hardest test I've ever taken in my life, the DLAB. Defense Language Aptitude Barrier.
Holy crap, that sounds impressive, Chris.
Yeah, and so it basically measures your ability to learn foreign languages.
Wow.
And like it's funny, like our military, we give them, so much hell for spending money on all these things. Like this test is administered on like a cassette tape, and like that if you watch like the old like police movies from the 70s and they have like that tape recorder, I'm pretty sure they had that tape recorder to administer this exam.
Oh my gosh.
And like there was like one section that was like, I don't remember what it was, but the third was like recognizing like speech patterns.
Uh-huh.
And so they would like say four things in Arabic, and you had to figure out which one had a different, like,
which was different.
Yeah, which one had a different accent pattern. And a lot of these times these things got into like tertiary accents.
Yeah.
And so, and the thing is, this thing is all on tape. So they ask the question once, and then they move on. Like there is no waiting and going back for the class.
Right.
Like it's very much like this question, A this, B this, C this, D this. Question 35. Like you need to get it right the first try. And then the last section, they literally teach you a made up language on the spot with English as a base. So they'll be like, all articles will now be a word that starts with C.
Okay.
And they'd be like, how would you say this sentence in this new language? Or they'd be like, now like the role of like the verb will now come after the noun.
Yeah.
And they would keep compounding these rules on and like making it more advanced to like go through this like made up language. And like you literally, I just had to keep interpreting. And I wound up scoring like the highest that I know of. Like I met a lot of other linguists. So the max score on that was a 146.
Yeah.
And you had to score a minimum of 100 to qualify. Like, and all the languages were based into categories essentially. Like your level one's your Italian, your French, your Spanish. Level two is like your Russian, like your Cyrillic kind of languages. Cat 3 was Russian because it was all like on its own.
Right.
And there was Cat 4, which was Japanese, Korean, Chinese and Arabic. Yeah. And then the next year they were introducing Cat 5.
What is that?
Korean.
Oh, Korean's
like it was just like the language that was like considered the hardest. Like training for that was 72 weeks.
No kidding.
Yeah, and so like I was all set to like go and be like this Korean translator, and then like blew out my knees.
How did you do that? You're listening to language. How did you blow out your knee?
Yeah, so you're still in the military, so you still have to be like physically fit and be able to go into like a combat zone.
Oh. Wait, so you went into a combat zone?
No, I never made it.
You got to train to do it, though.
Yeah, so like you still have to pass like the basic military training, which I got to have one of my favorite jobs ever. Was my short stint in the military. I got to yell at people.
Good.
The government paid me for it.
Sounds pretty cush.
Oh yeah,
job, yeah.
It was pretty rad. I get to yell at like 18-year-old kids, and like they can't yell back. Oh, man. That's the thing that a lot of people don't know. Is like when you show up to the Air Force. And you're like 18 and dumb, and you signed your life away, and you're rolling up on your bus, and this dude gets on this bus and like takes the hat off and tells you in a certain number of words that you need to get off of that bus, and you need to get lined up, and you need to do it now.
Wow,
those weren't actual TIs or training instructors or like drill sergeants, as most people would know. Like those were actually people like me that had busted knees.
No shit.
Yeah, it was a detail called night bagging. It was like the premier detail.
That's amazing.
Because like you got so many privileges. Because when you're in medical hold, you're still in a military standard. Because you're there with people that just like, rolled their ankle and like they're going to rehab it for 2 weeks, and they're going to get right back into it, and they're going to graduate and go off to tech school.
Yeah.
Like with me, like it was called RTT, or return to training. And so you're still in this military standard, like no matter what. But so they would use some of us to do like the grunt work there. So like I actually worked out to be the lead night bagger. So like there was always like the one guy, and then he picked his crew.
Yeah.
Like the senior guys got to stay later, and so on and so forth. And you could extort the 18-year-olds for cigarettes and things.
It's like prison.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah, like we literally, I remember my speech to this day. Like I'd get on the bus, and like you just have like all these kids just scared, and like take my hat off, and like
you're actually taking your hat up too. This is this is muscle memory. I like this.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like you stuff it down in your leg with your cover, and you're just like, on behalf of Brigadier General Jones and the 37th Training Wing, allow me to be the first one to welcome you to Lackland Air Force Base. And I said it in this exact pitch. Like, you are here to begin basic military training. What this means is you've got about 30 seconds to get your crap in your left hand and get the hell off my bus. And then I would just, 30, 29, 26, you're on my time now.
The death metal vocals come back, don't they?
They never made it out in under 30 seconds.
Never?
Well, my 30 seconds.
I see. Okay. Well, so how long was that total stay then in the Air Force for you?
I think it was there about 6 months.
Discharge, honorably discharged, is that what they call it?
No, I got what's called an ELS, or entry-level separation, which is a thanks for trying.
Oh.
Good luck and have fun.
Gold star.
Yeah. Here's your participation.
And still at this point, are you 21 yet?
Yeah, I was 22 at the time.
Okay, so you had at this point kind of been introduced to alcohol finally.
Yeah,
in a way that where you could kind of drink as much as you wanted or as little and kind of explore it.
Yeah, I drank a lot of Shiner.
Shiner, yeah.
Yeah, 'cause I turned 21 back in like my band days.
Yeah.
So like I'd have my like official band wristband,
right.
And so I'd drink at the bar.
Well, so real quick tangent before we talk, I think what is probably your introduction and kind of going back into the service industry, but in a different capacity. You made it to a degree in the Philippines. Did that make you ever want to be a big rock star again? Because one of the stories we were talking about before was, I think this should be the bar story that you never tell on the record, even though I think it's a brilliant story.
I don't know that I ever, like, once I started doing it, because, like, I always have, like, these grandiose dreams, but I always, like, hyper-specialize, so I knew I was never going to be, like, this big, giant rock star. I just wanted to, like, make it enough.
Yeah.
That, like, I could do that as a career. And then, like, once the whole thing with, like, Testament and that tour fell through, I started researching more and more, and I'm like, oh, man, like, these guys who are, like, the singers for these bands that I, like, really adore. Like, the biggest one that I remember is the lead singer of Agalock, the professor at Oregon State.
Oh, wow.
Or, like, I want to say at the time, Glenn from Deicide still had a day job.
Yeah.
Like, these guys
literally... Milo, right? He was working for 3M, I think, in a chemistry lab.
Yeah, exactly. Like, these guys all still had day jobs, and, like, they would just take 3 months off the tour.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I should have a day job so I can actually facilitate these things if I want to do it again.
It makes some sense. It's about that balance.
Yeah.
But this career, while we're here today and you're here in town for bourbon, bluegrass, and barbecue, I mix the B's up, but I'm just called B3. Then I don't have to give it any order.
Yeah.
This is what you first said. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, oh, barbecue, bourbon, blues.
I didn't know it was called that either. That's just that's how they sent it to me in the email. It was like the B3 sponsorship doc. I'm like, that's actually much easier.
Way easier. Yeah, it's great. So B3, okay. So we're here. You're gonna later this evening. We'll both be eating some barbecue, drinking some bourbon, which is great. But this now wildly decorated career has hit a fever pitch. Your name is popping up everywhere now. I saw it in the like I was talking about earlier. Bartender of the Year with Heaven Hill, which is rad. I mean, great products there. Most imaginative bartender with Bacardi and stuff. So you got a lot of great things going on. But where did booze become this thing that you became passionate about?
It really got started like back in my wine days. So I was working as an assistant sommelier under Eric Hastings at Eddie V's out in City Center. And this is when we first discovered that things like Corpse Reviver number 2s were a cocktail.
Yeah.
Like I remember we made those in the bar and we all tasted. We're like, oh, this is a great thing. And obviously we're in like a corporate restaurant like out on the west side. So they put it on the menu as a town and country, which is the street we were on.
Oh, geez.
So like nobody's gonna buy it if you call it a Corpse Reviver. And like I started like digging into it. I found the whole Corpse Reviver family.
Yeah.
And I
don't like number 1 as much. 2 is far superior, I think.
Number 1's
It's all right.
it has some balance issues,
Yes.
and like it's not really it's not like a corpse reviver. It's not a hangover drink.
No.
Like, it's the kind of thing like I drink to become a corpse. Like, it's an unreviver, right? And like then number 3 was just super weird. But I went on a challenge and I told my boss I'm going to serve all 3 corpse revivers and I'm going to call them corpse revivers.
Nice.
And over the course of a week, I got somebody to buy number 1, number 2, and number 3.
That's amazing.
Yeah, like I don't like being told I can't do things.
I can tell.
I take them as personal challenges.
Punk
a lot
kids,
of
they
times.
often can't be put in a corner. They refuse.
Yeah, like we had just gotten our first bottle of Yamazaki 12
Oh, nice.
back when it was like affordable.
Sure.
And like first in Texas, and we got a bottle of Fernet,
Mm.
and like we all taste this Fernet, and like you never forget that first shot for better or for worse. And I'm just like, what on earth is going on here? And
Yeah.
there were nights like we just go to Anvil because like Anvil had just recently opened at that time. Like we had guys eventually that were working with us that wound up like going on and having illustrious careers with those guys. And so like that was sort of like seeing that spirits was more than just like flavored martini.
Yeah.
Like I've drank a bunch of like really awful stuff.
Sure, we all have.
My early days like double goose white Russians.
Yeah,
Let's
there you go.
And
The golden goose.
yeah, or when I got my first industry job, I was waiting tables at Olive Garden before they broke up with me. That's how I got fired.
Chris, no more breadsticks for fuck's sake.
Well, it wasn't even that.
No, I'm just saying that's my favorite part of the whole spot.
Yeah, like my manager sits me down one day and she was like, Chris, I think it's just gonna be better if we go our separate ways. And I'm just like, well, who gets to keep the dog? like, what's actually going on here? And I was like, whatever. I had a job in a week, and that later like wound up like haunting me when I was like, I'd rage quit a job, like put in my 2 weeks with no plan, so I'm like scattering, like running around. I like put in my application at Capitol Grill, and they're like, "Have you ever been terminated from a Darden property?" I'm like,
wow, that's a specific question.
well, I mean, it's in their parent company.
I know, but still.
And I was like, as a matter of fact, I have. But like this was totally 6 years ago, and like
It was mutual. Feeling is mutual.
yeah, it's like it's okay. I think we're friends on Facebook now. But yeah, I did not get the job at Capitol Grill.
Do you find that like the world of spirits, when you first introduced to it, in my opinion anyway, is it seems pretty topical, pretty superficial. You talk about double goose and white Russian. You don't really understand the capacity, the terroir, all these fancy kind of terms, how culturally relevant spirits really are.
Yeah.
Fernet, you know, in its time and place, and in terms of the culture, the bartender community and stuff. But for you, was there a single cocktail? Now, maybe it was the Corpse Reviver, but something that you realized that spirits are not only something you experience in a sensory way, but they're tied to a time and place. It brings you almost back to your AP European history class.
I always had that, and it came from the wine side. Like being a sommelier is the reason that I'm good at bartending.
Yeah.
Because I really found my passion when I was working in the steakhouse scene. My dad always told me growing up, if somebody does the same job as you and they make more money, figure out why.
That's a great point.
And then do what they do.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's actually really sage advice.
Well, it's very that's a great competitive analysis,
and
right?
so like,
all about the industry.
And so I was working at this place, and I found the guy who made the most money. And I realized that he had this stuff called wine on all of his tables, and I had beer on all of mine. And like Silver Oak cost a shitload more than Coors Light.
Right. Good profit.
Yeah,
margins,
spoiler alert, right? Like, so I was like, okay, I got to learn how to sell this wine thing. And then I wound up leaving that job, going to a steakhouse, and like we had to take mandatory wine training. And I found, and in those days, like anything you needed was like on the bottle. Like you could literally walk up and you're like, this is you don't even have to know. You're like,
right.
This is your Chateau so-and-so Cabernet Sauvignon 2012 from Mendoza. And you look like you know what you're doing.
Right.
Or there was a bottle in our cellar of Orin Swift Prisoner, that fantastic like Goya piece as the print. And I picked it up. I'm like, there's no information on this. And I turn it around and it says red wine. I'm like, well,
wow.
What does that mean? Like, well, when I take it to the table, I'm supposed to like say what the grapes are, right?
Yeah.
Like that's how this wine service thing works. So I went home and I started researching this wine, and I found the story of Dave Finney, who makes it. And he was going to college in like Arizona and convinced like his professor to let him grow grapes so he could try making wine. And then he took his summer and went up to Napa and worked on like the night crew, like harvesting grapes. Like in his own words, he was the only white guy on an all Mexican night crew.
Yeah.
And when I started researching it, he actually had a Sauvignon Blanc that he was doing where he was donating all his proceeds back to a charity called Puertas Abiertas, Open Doors.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all about providing medical assistance to these vineyard workers, and many of them being undocumented and just up here like grinding and doing this really strenuous physical labor and just trying to make a living for their families back in Mexico. Like they come up for the season and then go back. And I was like, holy shit, like there are humans that make these things. Like there are stories behind all of this. And like that's when it really clicked that like it's my job now to find these stories and tell these stories. Yeah. And I've probably put Dave's kids through college. I've sold a lot of Orange Swift over the years.
That's amazing.
Like when you tell people a story like that, like they can't say no to the wine.
Yeah.
And so that's really like where the fire came from. And also like being a sommelier, like one note descriptors are never enough. Like the curiosity just goes so far beyond because you're like, okay, this tastes like apples. You're like, great. Is it a green apple? Is it a red apple?
Right.
Is it underripe? Is it overripe? Is it just ripe enough? Is it the Goldilocks of apples?
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, you just are constantly asking and pushing forward. That's one thing I find with a lot of bartenders. Like, they'll taste like a sherry, and they're like, okay, like, this tastes like this. And they never ask, like, why does this taste like this?
Right.
So I think that's where, like, being a sommelier, like, really came in. And it taught me to always dig deeper. Find out where it came from, find out why it exists, find out why it tastes the way it does. And like that then helps you figure out what things you can put with it. And you're like, then you're telling stories through drinks. You're telling stories of the people who make these things.
Well, so here's an interesting question for you that's going to catch you off guard, or so I hope. So you've been married how long now?
2 years.
2 years, great. So we're about in the same boat here.
Yeah.
And you have, obviously you're a very intelligent guy and you can find the details of things. How does that fare for you when you're arguing with your wife?
She wins.
It's hard, right? You try to intellectualize stuff. That's like I do.
We're actually very blessed. We don't have very many like hard arguments.
Yeah.
Just because we're both intelligent, respectful adults.
Right.
And like I can tell when she's getting angry, and she can kind of tell when like I'm boiling up. And so like if we see that, like we kind of give each other space. Like sometimes it'll take like 2 or 3 days, and then like we'll come back and be like, hey, like sorry, I was being kind of shitty.
Right.
Like we've never had like a full blown like knockdown drag out argument in like our 4 or 5 years together.
That's great.
That I can remember. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Well,
I don't like to yell either, but I will sometimes.
Well, like we're very modern in a lot of ways. Like we're like, yes, it's marriage, but in a lot of ways, like. And I know the word my partner, like it's a partnership.
Yeah, sure.
Like we're two strong, independent people that happen to love each other. Mm. But if things go south, like we don't need each other. We choose this life together.
Sure.
And so there's always like that mutual respect. Like when I talk to people, I'm like, we have different bank accounts.
Yeah. Oh, I do.
Like, you know, she had the house before I ever moved in. So she still takes care of the house. And like my income pays for my bills and like all of our, you know, fun money and going out, like I pick that up, and if she ever needs money, she comes to me. Like if I ever need it, like I give her.
I absolutely same kind of configuration for me, and obviously there's a tangent, but I think people just have this expectation about what marriage is like. They have this expectation about what bartending is. You know, sometimes they don't feel it's like a lucrative career, but the bottom line is that you make it your own. You make it evolved. You make it progressive, right? And so all this stuff you're saying. You like I'm gonna owe you more whiskey because I fucking completely agree with you, and I don't think it's wrong, and I don't apologize for it.
Yeah,
you know. And so the thing we were talking about this again before the mics were on, but you had been drilling from behind the bar for a long time, working a lot of places in Houston, and now it looks like you're hitting this creative apex. You are becoming a brand on your own. You have started to. So this Bittersmith project, is this homegrown from you? Is this something you created? Are you a partner or?
Yeah. So Bittersmith started, the whole roots of it start when we were opening Radio Milano out in City Center, and we had like this really great menu of like 40 cocktails, and we had like lime bitters and absinthe bitters,
Yeah.
and all these like beautiful things. And I went to my boss and I was like, when we were stocking up and like starting training, I was like, hey, like, do we have all these bottles? He's like, no, we got to make them. I'm like, well, from what I understand, bitters take a little bit of time.
Sure.
So do you have recipes? Like, I'll go ahead and get started. And he goes, no. I was like, challenge accepted. And so like I
No one's gonna keep you down.
yeah, so I like went off on this journey of like figuring out how to make absinthe bitters and lime bitters and whatever else we were doing, and they turned out like decent. They were usable. The cocktails tasted good. So then I would start like, all right, well, if I can do that, like maybe I can make this style bitters. And like we just always had like random jars and things going, and people would come in and they taste it and like, man, like you should sell these. They're really good. And I was like, maybe.
Yeah.
And then when we left there, we went to Hunky Dory, and a friend of mine was opening a bar called Canard.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, as basically like an opening gift to her, I made her own bitters. It was like super floral, like lots of Earl Grey and lavender and tarragon. And she wound up like putting it on her menu. And she was like, man, these are really good. She actually took it down to Tails in Mexico City.
Uh-huh.
And when she came back, she's like, hey, I worked my guest shift, and I let Tristan Stevenson taste your bitters. And I'm like, what? What did you just say? And she was like, yeah, you want to know what he said? I'm like, well, obviously. He said, it's really refreshing to taste someone's homemade bitters that are actually fucking bitter.
Yeah. Amazing.
And I was like, all right, like now there's like, these things have gone international and people have tasted them. Like, yeah, they're good. I'm like, okay. So we started doing like test batches and finally figured out like the core lineup of flavors that we were doing. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to go sell bitters now.
That's crazy.
And then Bittersmith just eventually like started evolving into a brand, because then it was like, oh, I'm going to take on this consulting project, and then I'm going to do like this private event, and I'm going to work this event with this brand. I'm like, I need like a parent thing to like tie all this together. So I just took the name and just made it from like this specialized, bitters into like just sort of, a brand and an overarching, what I call, a Texas cocktail company.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. So some of the services, not to make this too stale, but you're out there putting your mind into things. You're helping people via consulting. You're creating this actual product. You doing any brand work as well?
I do a little bit on the side, and mostly like it'll be like co-sponsoring. Like we just did Butcher's Ball out in Brenham.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And I was hanging out with the guys from William Grant, and I was like, yeah, we're sponsoring bourbon, bluegrass, and barbecue. Like, hey, you want to co-sponsor Butcher's Ball with us? And I'm like, yeah, sure. They're like, yeah, like just help us come up with the cocktails and like just feature your bitters and like just come out and like make it for people. I was
That's
like,
amazing.
okay, like, yeah, that's a thing. And like I got in with them and like, yeah, we're gonna keep you on like retainer for like consulting work. But as far as like ambassadorship or anything like that, I haven't gotten into that side.
It feels like you're the brand right now. You know what I mean? Like the things that you're creating and your knowledge and your insight, you can help spread your own brand. The bitters are a great conduit for that, So you might be eclipsed by a much larger brand depending.
Yeah, like where I'm at right now, like it's just kind of like sitting back and like seeing what comes my way. Like I'm completely open to brand work, like if I find the right fit. Because I'll never be the guy that can go out and sell something that like I don't fully 100% believe in.
Yeah.
It's like if you're like, I have to be diehard on your entire portfolio. Sure. And I have to love it. And if I love it, I'll sell it and I'll go out there and I'll spread the word. But if I'm like iffy on something, like it shows, like it 100% does. Like that passion isn't there. And so like if that opportunity comes along with the right brand, then like, yeah, like let's go, let's have some fun. But we just haven't found the right match right now.
It's interesting how I wouldn't say it was this pursuit of notoriety for you in terms of bands, but when you're out there performing, there's a certain level of high, there's a certain level of creative exchange. It's something it's quite addictive actually to some degree, right? And it feels like you have parlayed that ability to compose, the ability to perform, and you've formed it into this nice project and consulting business via some bitters and via. So in other words, what I'm saying, Chris, is you've returned to the stage, man. It really feels that way.
Well, no, it very much is. Like a really eye-opening experience for me was my first ever cocktail competition. So it sounds funny to say now. When I first started bartending, I hated competitions. I thought they were stupid.
Yeah.
And I told people all the time, the only competition I want to win is I want you in my bar drinking my drinks and give me money to do so.
That's the punk ideology, is why.
Like
absence of ego. Right?
Yeah, we have a goods and services relationship, and I want you to come to my bar and exercise that relationship, and that's the only competition I care about.
Right.
And so my boss at the time came up to me. He's like, "Hey, there's this Bombay Sapphire competition I want you to do, because I really think you should do one." He's like, "You make the cocktail. They come to the bar. They judge you, and they'll give you actually a Cocktail Kingdom gift card." I'm like, "Well, I'm a whore, so yeah, give me money. I'll make you a drink. That's fine." So I get the email, and it's like, "Hey, thanks for enrolling in Bombay Sapphire Most Imaginative Bartender." I was like, "Oh shit, this is a real competition." Like a friend of mine had gone to nationals the year before, Leslie Ross, and like I knew the work she put in. I'm like, "Oh, I have to like actually make a good drink and try." I was like, "All right." So I come up with something, and like I wind up qualifying for regionals. Like one of only 2 people in Houston, and like there were only 6 from Texas at the time, and I was like, "Oh, now I really got to try."
Right.
And so like I had somebody teach me like IBA rules, which no one uses anymore, thank God, because they're like super archaic. So like I wind up going, and I have like, by what I know now, like this absolute like bomb terrible thing. Like in IBA, like time didn't start until you touched a bar tool.
Mm-hmm.
So I literally spent 5 minutes telling the whole story of the cocktail, and then spending 7 minutes making the drink in absolute silence. Just being like cinnamon scented Amaro Montenegro, a ½ ounce per cocktail.
Got it, okay.
And then just like pouring all super weird and formal. And then a couple spots after me, I got to watch Justin Lavenue.
Oh, Justin, yeah. Integrating the narrative.
And I just watched this guy telling the story and doing these beautiful motions, and I'm like, this is performance art.
That's right.
But with bartending and cocktails as a medium.
That's the instrument.
Yeah. And that was the year that he went on and won nationals.
Mm-hmm.
And from what people told me, like it was really like me and him in the very end. Like they're the very clear top 2 best drinks. And like he just made it through because like his presentation was so amazing.
Got a charm, right?
And he was spot on, and he was charming, and he's the most beautiful man I've ever seen.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
Yeah, he's pretty.
I'm going to tell you a story about him when we get off the mic.
But yeah, so like we get through with that, and I'm like, and I see him go on a win. I'm like, man, I just barely lost to this guy that like won nationals. Like,
right.
All right, maybe I can do this thing, and maybe I can get like my creative and like competitive fix with this, because I can learn to do performance. Like I was a musician. Like this is what I was born to do.
Of course, you know how to compose. I mean, all the skills are there.
And it took like a good another year before I finally like won one, and then like I just kept winning and had like the best year ever. And like I've been very blessed and very lucky. But that's where the spark all kind of started, was watching Justin Lavenue, like, and understanding that like the cocktail is the centerpiece to a greater art that we're doing.
That's amazing, and I feel it's very symbolic. And he's a lovely guy, and he does embody some of that, the charisma and just the nuance and the intention of delivery. Yeah, because sometimes some people forget. I think these competitions are weird because it's almost like auditioning for a role in a movie. Oh yeah, you know, it is very similar to that. Well, so we're gonna hang out more this evening at the B3 event, and we're sipping some Balvenie 21. I don't know. I just had the bottle. Wingo was just in. I figured it was a good thing to share with you.
Oh, it's a great whiskey. It's one of my favorites.
Not a bad one at all.
No, it doesn't suck.
And so I've got really one more question for you. This one, I don't know how you're going to answer that, but I'm going to add a little caveat because I know you're a whiskey guy. I know you smoke cigars a bit too. Take some good pictures of that stuff. So let's say the place doesn't matter. So you're at any bar in the world and you're sipping a whiskey. We'll make it a bourbon, so I don't have to make this too confusing. You're sipping a bourbon, and you're talking and having a conversation with anybody, living or deceased. 1, what bourbon are you in the mood for to sip? And 2, who would you love to have that conversation with?
Man, what bourbon are we sipping? You complicated this one so much.
I thought that was easier, because if I left it for whiskey, Jesus, that'd be difficult.
Yeah, it would be pretty difficult. I'm not going to lie. Man, I don't know what bourbon it would be. It would probably be like an older Willet.
Okay, yeah.
Like back in their NDP days, like some of those like 15, 20-year Willets just had like this beautiful, like some of their honey barrels were just like so good.
Oh man, yeah, it's brilliant stuff.
And
That's good. No, that makes me envious because I don't have a bottle, so I have to go find one now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm much more like sort of a malt whiskey guy, so that was definitely kind of a wrench in the plans. But as far as like a person,
Yeah.
I'd have to go Teller from Penn and Teller.
Really?
Like, think about it. Like, the dude's like he's this like
that's fair.
He's this intense skeptic,
right?
and he's like lived and breathed like downtown dirty Las Vegas for like over 30 years. Like, that dude has some stories to tell.
Yeah.
But then you get like the irony of like Teller like never talking, and like I guarantee you having a conversation with that guy would be like insane.
I've never thought about talking to someone who just doesn't talk. That's amazing. Yeah. That's a really brilliant way to look at it. I've never thought about it. Who's the famous mime? Marcel? Is that right? Yeah, he's but yeah. So would he talk? Would he talk? You know, or maybe you use this to like do the greater good of the universe, and like, what about like DB Cooper? If you can find him, right?
Well, I mean, in your theoretical example, I found him. I invited him to a bar. I'm drinking bourbon. So
that's a great point.
Yeah, or like Jack the Ripper. Like, let's solve some mysteries, and like,
you're using this as a means to improve history, Chris. This is far too insightful for me.
I mean, I once used drinking to solve a murder case. So.
Really?
Yeah. That happened this year. We had gone out with some friends, like this lovely Saint Germain dinner. We were hanging out, having some drinks later. And I'm headed on the way home. Come to this light, and this dude tears through a red and like T-bones me, puts me up on this embankment. And I'm like, oh God. And like, I get out of my car, and I'm like, all right, my car is in really bad shape. And like, luckily there was a cop who kind of like saw the thing happen. So he immediately gets off and turns around. And like, before long, I realized no one's talked to me yet. It's been about like 10 minutes.
Whoa.
So eventually this cop comes up. He's like, gets my information. He's like, we'll be right with you. He's like, it's a little complicated. I'm like, okay.
Whoa.
And the next guy comes up. He's like, hey, man, I know it's been a while. I just want to let you know this is an active scene for 2 different investigations. I'm like, that sounds really serious.
Holy shit.
So you do you, homie. And like the next cop finally comes up because like there's like 4 squad cars on the scene because they're having to shut down like basically a feeder road.
Yeah.
And he's like, Mr. Morris? I'm like, yes, sir. He goes, I have some good news. I have some bad news. I was like, all right, hit me. He goes, the bad news is you were in an accident. I'm like, so that's why my car's at a 45-degree angle. That explains it.
Right.
And he goes, the good news is you might have just helped solve a murder investigation. I was like, what? He's like, yeah, these guys actually had a gun in the car. He's like, and a pretty big one. It was an SKS.
Oh, jeez.
I was like, really? He's like, yeah. The driver took off and tried to ditch it around the corner because when the airbag went off, it broke the stock off, which thankfully, because that meant they couldn't shoot me.
That's right.
So apparently, like they had just done a drive-by like 10 minutes ago and were like fleeing the area and serendipitously like hit me. So
that's a crazy roundabout way to solve a murder.
Yeah, I'm basically an alcoholic Batman.
That's a book that needs writing. No, it's a brilliant way to frame it. I'm glad that we connected. I'm glad that you wanted to sit down and chat. I'm glad you kind of trekked up from Houston to do the B3 thing tonight and sipping whiskey with you. We're gonna have to do more of it, man. It's been really good chatting about all this stuff and the death metal, and I just I saw this picture. I can't really soon forget it. The devil luck in all of its glory. Man.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that can't forget it.
Well, it's been a brilliant privilege chatting with you, and we will chat even more as time goes on, Chris. Thanks so much for sitting down, man.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Thank you. Well, there we have it, Mr. Chris Morris. What do you guys think of the Houston native? He's left quite the impact on the scene. Cocktail scene, the music scene, the devil lock scene, so many different things that Chris is interested in, and it's great to hear. We talk about it just a little bit in this chat, the Bacardi Legacy Tournament Tour de Force, and he actually is now a national finalist in the competition with his Regalo drink, which is 1.5 ounces of Bacardi Carta Blanca, 1 ounce of Mango Nectar, half ounce of simple syrup, 3 to 4 medium basil leaves, and 1.5 ounce champagne. It sounds like a delicious, delicious drink. It's a bit cold here in Austin at the moment, but I think I could still use one of these fine cocktails. So, Chris, thanks so much for trekking up to Austin, sharing some bitters, and chatting about your life. And thank you for listening to Show to View with Mike G. It's 2018. Just got back from the San Antonio Cocktail Conference. Just released a new record. Things are looking optimistic. Things are looking great. And I hope we can all keep listening here together. So no matter how far you've made it in the Californication, Amazon Prime binge, or if you're thinking, I don't know if the Phantom Thread's going to live up to Paul Thomas Anderson's previous works, please keep thinking.